Hello, everybody. Mike Del Prete, Executive Director of the Arizona Real Estate Investors Association. And today we wanted to do an important update, a news update, so to speak, for real estate investors here in the state of Arizona. So we brought in our business associate, preferred vendor, Gila Insurance, Derek Kartchner. Welcome, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Awesome, and excited to have you here. So, as we all know, unfortunately, there's a lot of obviously the fire situation out in California. It's terrible to hear. There's a lot of insurance talk going on, and as investors, we need insurance on our properties. Highly recommend that. And we over the let's start with over the last couple years. I know there's been a lot of changes in general in insurance, and you guys need to know these updates and be informed with your local insurance provider or here at AZREIA, because when you're running your expense ratios on your properties and insurance is continuously going up or not able to get it, and you're about to buy a property in these certain areas, you need to understand the state of the insurance world. So no better to have Derek here. So Derek, maybe briefly just say, hey, what's your background real quick, 2 seconds, and then let's just jump into like the state of insurance for investors here in Arizona over the last couple years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. So, my name is Derek Kartchner. I own Hila Insurance Group. We're an insurance brokerage. We've been around for a while, and we specialize in working with investors. However, it is that you're investing, we can help, whether it's flips or long-term buy and holds or short-term rentals or whatever it is. We want to dive in and see if we can help you because that's we love working with investors. So I've been doing insurance since 2003. I have a master's degree. It's an MBA, but I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time in Florida State's risk management and insurance school and took some classes from there where we were doing modeling of catastrophic stuff. So from an insurance perspective, I mean, obviously our hearts go out to those that have lost homes and and worse, right? We feel, our hearts go out to those that are suffering right now. But from an insurance perspective, it's kind of interesting to see how things are unfolding and how things will unfold. As far as the state of the market, it's been really interesting. It's a hard market, and that's defined as raising premiums and limiting coverage, right? So we are seeing policies that are significantly, 200% more than what they were 4 years ago. And from my perspective, and I don't know if my perspective is the end all be all of this, but the insurance companies, because of the inflation in the market, were unable to predict their losses. The losses were greater than what they thought they were going to be, primarily because of inflation. And because of that, they started losing money. Several years ago, in the state of Arizona, they were losing 10, 12, 14 cents on every dollar that they took in. And when you start to think about the profit, on a per dollar basis for an insurance company might be 1, 2, 3 cents. Their ability to predict their losses is super important. And when they lose control of that, their options are to pull back, insure less, and raise rates. And that's exactly what's happened. And it has been drastic over the last couple of years. And so we've seen worse coverage, higher premiums, and really difficult underwriting where a lot of companies are not wanting to insure a lot, which seems weird given that that's what they do, right?
Right. So what in Arizona first, one, is there a percentage of how much insurance has increased, and what areas of Arizona have been affected the most where there's no policies or they're getting taken away?
Yeah. So every carrier is a little bit different, right? Every carrier basically stands on their ability to underwrite a particular risk. And so when you look at a house that's brand new and has these characteristics, essentially what's happening is these companies are looking at a home saying, okay, these are the characteristics, this is how it's being used, and they put it into a box, right? And that's the rate for that box. And a lot of it has to do with the home, but a lot of it has to do with the individual. So when you say how much have they increased, well, that's a difficult one, but across the market, 40, 50%
Wow.
is not, that's not uncommon. And what's interesting is that, as an independent agent, we represent different companies. And so we see what's happening. And sometimes we'll have a carrier that has a problem. And so they'll raise their rates, but there will be other companies that are less, that they're still making money. And so we're able to see that. But what we've seen is all carriers are raising rates and in
Got
a
it.
drastic way. So much so that, a person could call and say, hey, my rates have increased. And the answer literally might be like, yeah, but not as much as everybody else. Yeah, it's a hard market for sure.
And are there in Arizona, like northern Arizona,
Yeah.
where there can be fires or there have been fires, is it harder to get policies up north or down south around Phoenix?
Yeah, so for sure. Interestingly enough, when it comes to the insurance market, and there might be an underwriter out there that would tell me that I'm 100% wrong in what I'm about to say, but just in my experience, Maricopa County, there seems to be more markets and people like it, and so they're going after it. And anytime a carrier comes in and says, "Hey, we want to grow," what we find is a lot of times the rates are more competitive in Maricopa County. Anything outside of that can be a little bit more difficult, even Pima County. So, but I will tell you, Northern Arizona, there is a line drawn that legitimately Northern Arizona is problematic. More than just a hard market where we're seeing rates increase, we are seeing a rash of companies non-renew a policy, right? So usually you get your renewal and okay, my rate went up by X number of dollars. What we're seeing is companies saying, thank you, we've completed the contract and we have no desire to proceed with insuring this risk. We were okay with it, now we're not. That's a non-renewal, right? And we're seeing that a lot of homes in Show Low, Payson, Flagstaff, Sedona, um, Prescott, Prescott Valley, that just massive swaths of that are being non-renewed. And part of the reason is because of wildfire. That is not necessarily because of what's going on in California today,
Mhm.
but I do think that as the insurance companies and reinsurance companies had losses in California, that it's caused them to look at the West as a whole and say, all right, we're going to reassess the risk that we have, right? And so we're seeing carriers very much tighten up their underwriting in higher wildfire areas. So every quote that we do, there's a couple of things that are looked at. One of them is a wildfire score. And so a lot of carriers have said if it's greater than a one, and a one is just on whatever scale they have, it's, we're not interested in insuring it, right? And some of them will say, okay, we'll take a two, and each there are third party companies that are basically drawing maps that say this is a higher wildfire risk. And so for a lot of people that have homes in northern Arizona, one of the things that we've said is, hey, your best bet is to stay where you're at. Don't change. Keep that policy. But it's gone up in price. I know. Don't change because it's going to be difficult to find. And we recently had a carrier that said, yep, nope, we're getting out of these zip codes for secondary homes, rental properties, and Airbnbs in northern Arizona. Those have not yet been announced, so I can't say what carrier it is, but it's more difficult to find those for sure.
So with all that's going on in California right now, what are some maybe predictions in regards to what's going to happen in Arizona, especially in these all throughout the state, but especially up in northern Arizona? What are
Yeah.
some underwriting I'm imagining is going to change, or like you said, cancellations? Like what's going to happen?
I It's too soon to tell, so everything I'm about to say is a little bit speculative. I think we've already seen what's going to happen. We might see more carriers
Okay.
non-renew and pull back, right? The good news about Arizona in contrast to California is the California Department of Insurance is very involved and highly regulates their carriers, right? Um, I I don't want to delve too much into that. We are licensed
Yeah.
in California, right? Like, but traditionally it's known that Arizona or California is a difficult state for insurance companies, and we've seen that State Farm and Allstate have said, hey, we're not taking new business in California. So I mean, there are certain things going on there, and there are different sides of that story, and I don't want to be partisan to that. But as it pertains to Arizona, Arizona is an easier state to work with from a regulatory standpoint. And so because of that, we're going to see, I think we'll continue to see rates increase. I do think that there may be some more non-renewals. We have had fires in Arizona just a couple of years ago. There was property loss in Flagstaff, in
Yeah.
an area that I used to live, right? And so, I mean, it's not as if we're untouched. A lot of people say, yeah, but it hasn't happened in a really long time. And they'll talk about the Rodeo Chetiskyi fire, which, yeah, that caused some damage, in the White Mountain areas. But, and we haven't had something like that. But what happened in Flagstaff a couple of years ago says that it can. And every year, it seems that a portion of Flagstaff is evacuated because of wildfire problems, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see carriers crank down on the underwriting, but they have. Writing new business in these areas is very, very difficult. Very.
So when it comes, so you mentioned something about zip codes. So it's
Yeah.
you're not saying it's about, hey, I have a single family, I have a mobile home, I have a multifamily. It has nothing to do with the insurance coverage or what they're thinking, or does it?
So it does. Like when a carrier looks at it, they're looking at a lot of different factors, right? And a lot of people ask, like, well, what's going to drive the rate? Well, the algorithms are such that you could have two investment properties from two different investors right next to each other that could have an $800 or $1,000 rate increase. And some of that could be related to the investor, and some of that could be related to the difference in how they're built, right? So, so when it comes to that, it's really hard to compare. But you know, when it comes to an individual property, there are geolocation things where they're looking at how far are you from a fire department. And this isn't wildfire, this is just how quick is somebody going to respond. And you're given a protection class. And that protection class corresponds to how good of a fire department your responding fire department, how good are they? How quickly are
Yeah.
they going to be out there? If I'm in Central Phoenix, I'm a protection class 1, they're going to be there in seconds, right? If I'm in a different part, on the outskirts of town, it might be 10 minutes. So distance from a fire department, the responding fire department, how good they are, how trained they are they volunteer, are they, on call, or are they at the fire
No,
station? Are they career
didn't know that.
firefighters, right? But they may look at the earthquake or what kind of flood, and they're going to look at what that area looks like. And then they're going to break it down to the house. What does that look like? Is it block? Is it frame? What kind of plumbing does it have? Is it cast iron or galvanized pipe? That can have a huge difference from one home that's sitting next to the other. If it's all been repiped and has copper piping versus galvanized pipe that's 60 years old, that galvanized pipe is about to start leaking. I can guarantee it, right? And that's an insurance claim. So they are looking at individual things that are happening in the home, and then from an insured perspective, they're trying to figure out what is the likelihood that I file a claim. They're looking at they're going to call it insurance score, which has a credit element to it. Have I ever filed claims in the past? different things like that make an insurance score. And what that amounts to is the likelihood that I file a claim. If I have $1 million sitting in the bank, why am I going to file a claim on a
Yeah.
$10,000 loss? I won't. If I am flat broke, I am very much likely to file a claim on anything because I just don't have the money for it, right?
Yeah. Man, so as you're listening, this is why Derek is here at AZREIA. Imagine understanding all this. So when we have an issue, it's like call Derek. He shops around. He finds the insurance providers. He finds the best coverage, the best premiums. He does all that front work for you to get you the best insurance policy. So, anything you want to touch on in California in general in regards to insurance that maybe we should be aware of?
Yeah, so California, it's an interesting market, man. From the earthquake to the wildfires, it's become very unpredictable. And what is something that's happened? So Hila Insurance is licensed in now about 25 states. But one of the things that happened as we saw the market harden is a lot of insurance companies basically said, we don't want out-of-state brokers to insure in our state.
Hmm.
Or let me rephrase that. If you're in Arizona, what do you know about the California market, right? Like, so we're gonna reserve our ability to insure for California agents. Like that came from the insurance companies. And so, to be honest, they locked that down probably 3 years ago to where our ability to write in California is no longer, even though I'm licensed there, I've got clients there. And so because of that, it's like, okay, cool. Uh, that California market the good news is that it's different. Now, one of the things that the California market has that we don't have, that I'll be interested to see what happens, is they have the California Fair Plan. And so, because of the wildfire risk, a lot of carriers were like, look, we can't sustain these losses. We can't afford the reinsurance that it's going to take to be able to cover wildfire. And so, what we saw two policies being issued, kind of a standard policy that included the liability and would insure things other than fire. And then on the other side, what we would see is wildfire type stuff, fire, lightning, explosion. And so you would go and you would buy that from the fair plan. What happened though is I think that the fair plan ended up with way, way more homes being put into it as the insurance company said, we can't do this. We can't profitably make money and with these wildfire losses that we're seeing. Obviously, that's some speculation. It's more complicated than that, but ultimately, we don't have that in Arizona, right? So, but what is interesting is that let me see if I can see a date on it. December 11th, so about a month ago, the Arizona Department of Insurance came out and they are establishing a council. They call it the Arizona Department of Insurance and Financial Institution establishes Resilience and Mitigation Council with a focus on homeowners insurance. And so it's a public-private partnership with a lot of government entities, insurance companies, and fire departments that are getting together to try to find some of the solutions for these problems that we have in Arizona. Because we've seen the rates come up so much, because it's becoming difficult to write business in different areas. And you'd be surprised, we talk about northern Arizona, but there are pockets in and around Maricopa County that become very difficult as well. Pima County as well. If you're not in the city proper, it might be very difficult to find coverage for sure. So that was announced a month ago. I don't know what will come out of that council, but there are at least conversations at a high level as to how are we going to go about dealing with some of these areas.
Interesting. So now, as a real estate investor, we're out there, we're making offers, we're getting properties under contract, we're buying rentals or flips. What are some things that we should keep in mind when buying our houses? Like, at what point do we we contact you, or even for, this is a big question, but like even for our current rental properties, is there anything we should be looking into, changing, adjusting with you, anything along those
Yeah.
lines?
Yeah. So a couple things that I would say, and we found that the smart investors are doing this early, right? I mean, we know that, and I've heard Mike talk about it a lot, where it's like you got to build your team,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, you got your money guy, you got this, you're building different things. Like you need an insurance person on your team to at least advise on some things. And we do have AZREIA members that call us and say, hey, I'm thinking about this property. What do you think?
Yeah.
And you know what? For our members, we'll take the time. For AZREIA members, we'll take the time to kind of go through it and talk to them about it. I would just say you need to involve insurance early in the process. Oftentimes it's been an afterthought, but the reality is there are a number of deals that get blown apart because the home is uninsurable, right? Because of wildfire or because of the condition of the home. And as the market has gotten worse and we're seeing carriers kind of clamp down and up their underwriting, you just got to do it early. I have had AZREIA members contact us early in the inspection period and cancel the contract and get out as quick as they could because of things that we saw or things that we found from the insurance side. So I would just
Um,
say, as you're going through these processes, involve them early, because the days of I'm closing today or I'm closing tomorrow, that could be problematic. And then you could be stuck losing earnest money or worse, right?
Yep. And then, obviously always try to get an inspection period in your deals. That's what your due diligence is for. That's a huge topic that we push here at AZREIA. I know sometimes, us investors, we buy sight unseen or no inspections, 5,000 earnest deposit. Still give Derek a quick call, right? Give him a quick email just to kind of run the area and check it out, especially if you're outside of, Phoenix, anywhere outside here.
Yeah.
So,
And what's interesting, and I don't know that it would be appropriate to share, but the Arizona, like on this, but Arizona has a website that will tell you kind of what the government views the risk as,
okay.
like
Yeah.
the wildfire risk. And you would be surprised at areas that fall into wildfire risk. I mean, it's not as if, hey, I'm in Maricopa County, I'm good. You'd be surprised that things along the 202 and Santan are considered high wildfire risk. Now, we can have an argument
Yeah.
like that's not true, but in the end, it's like, yep, nope. And I can share that, and maybe you can put it in the notes or something like that. But yeah, Arizona has something that you can go look at and be like, oh, well,
Do
that's
you have that
interesting.
site?
Yeah, I do. It's kind of the URL is kind of goofy, but it's azgeo.az.gov.
Cool. Yeah, we'll put that in the notes for everyone to check out. Yeah, man. Again, fairly simple, but like, the thing is, like what I'm getting is you said coverages are shrinking, prices are going up, right? And you just got to have the insurance person like yourself on your team, contact your insurance agent or Derek before you get into these deals, not last minute. As a did you kind of touch on how current landlords, like because I know we talked about inflation in the past and like make sure they have the proper coverage. Is there anything along that line?
Yeah, look, what I what keeps me up at night, right? Legitimately is how how are my clients covered with the increase in home values, with the increase in cost to build? Is your home currently valued properly? There's this whole system around, how we determine home values when we're insuring stuff. But the reality is I don't know that those have kept up with inflation, and a lot of times current policies are behind. So the question is if you were to go find your policy, look at the declarations page and say coverage A limit is $400,000, Could you rebuild your home for $400,000, or would you be super ticked off if you got a check? Be like, dude, I need six. I recommend that every year, I don't know, put it on the day that you change your batteries in your smoke detectors. Go pull your insurance policies out and look at them and say, am I covered for enough? Because in the end, if you had a loss, a California situation or something else, like, are you covered for sufficiently, or are you going to be shorted on the check trying to figure out how you're rebuilding that home, right? Because losses do happen, and as a broker, one of the most frustrating things I hear is, insurance is a ripoff. Sure, until you have the loss, and then it's like a godsend, right? Like it's a blessing that you had the coverage that you had. So I look at them, and what I would say generally as landlords, your deductible is probably too low, right?
Got it.
I mean, as things increase, you don't want to ticky tack the coverage. What you want to look at is how much of this am I willing to insure? A lot of people have a $500 or $1,000 deductibles and then complain about high rates. Well, you're transferring a whole lot of risk to the carrier and not retaining a whole lot. Increase your deductibles and you can see that come down. It will get to a point where it's like, it doesn't make sense to jump to that level because the return's not there. But yeah, but I would look at that. But take a day and have a partner that's going to take a look at your policies and say, hey guys, look, this is where you're at. This is where here's my recommendations.
Awesome. And is there, as we wind down, is there anything I didn't cover?
I don't. I would say from an investor standpoint, and I'm going to knock on wood here as I say
Mhm.
this, dwelling fire policies, that is what a landlord policy, it's how it's insured is on a dwelling fire. Okay. We have seen rates increase, but it hasn't been as much as the homeowners. I don't know why that is. I think sometimes dwelling fire is a afterthought for some carriers, but that is a positive. So those long-term rental policies, they haven't gone up as much as you would think. The last thing that I would say is if you are considering um, switching insurance carriers, you want to be really intentional about how you do that, because insurance companies are inspecting homes and being more particular about what they're willing to insure. And so because of that, you want to make sure that you've passed that inspection before you go canceling your other policy, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to get caught where now all of a sudden you're uninsurable, right? Or
Yeah.
you've got to dump $10,000 into the home to make it insurable. You know what I mean? So those are some of the recommendations that I would have. Is
All
just be
right.
really intentional about it. Yeah.
Love it, man. So,
So
if someone wants to reach out to you for a policy or for you to overlook their policy or however it may work, how do we get a hold of you?
yeah. So the best thing that you could do is go to www.hilainsurance.com. And if you were to go there, you can go click on get a quote, and you'll see that there's stuff for your home, for your auto, for multifamily, whatever. We're going to ask for some information, right? But the benefit that you get by providing that stuff online is that we'll go out and quote it for you with multiple companies, try to figure out what's best, and then come back. If you call me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the information that I need, put it into our system, and then say, "Can I call you back?" Right?
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and the reason why is because our value proposition is in that we will shop the market for you, right? If you call and say, "I just need something right now," then I'm going to go with whatever I feel like at the moment. And usually it's based on, well, this company worked last time, so I'm going to go with that, right? And so if you're just put us in a time crunch, we're not adding the value that we could,
Yeah,
right?
taking 2 minutes to fill out the information is
Yep.
well worth it in the long run.
Yeah,
Doing
no,
it
for
right.
sure. And
Yeah.
and quite frankly, it's an easy thing to remember, right? HilaInsurance.com. So
Love it. And if you want to meet Derek in person, he's at our monthly meetings in at venue 8600 in Scottsdale on the second Monday of every month. It's our big trade show, networking, education. All the investors around town come out and get to know each other and learn and share resources. He's also going to be online on our Tucson monthly meeting on the second Tuesday of the month. So you just got to go to azrea.org/calendar to find out what events we got going on throughout the month. So thanks for tuning in, Derek. Thank you for sharing this important information as to what's going on in the insurance world today. Otherwise, any last words before we sign off here?
yeah, thanks, man. We love AZREIA.
We love Hila. Awesome, man. Thank you.
All right, thank you.